Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, book 3 in a series authored by Badasani Mani. And we are in the series exploring the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and drawing from these names amazing facts for us as Muslims as we understand it in the physical realm, but also the tremendous spiritual benefit that we can gain in the spiritual realm, inshallah. And last week we explored the attribute al-basir, the all-seeing, an attribute of sight, and we expounded on that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to go any further because time had run out. But we're going to continue with the attribute of al-basir this evening, inshallah. Joining me online, as always, alhamdulillah, is Badasani Mani. Badasani, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the show once again.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad Fasih, and all the listeners out there.
Shukran so much for joining us, Badasani, and as always, very important and very interesting discussions had, and profound when we talk about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala particularly. So last week we spoke about al-basir, the all-seeing, and we spoke about the science of sight and how science determines and sees the mechanics of actually seeing as we humans do with the eye. And some amazing things came out. But if we just go back and ask the question, in terms of putting people in the picture who have just tuned in and wasn't able to tune in last week, could we just maybe go back and recap or summarize what we spoke about last week for the benefit of the listener?
Inshallah, Muhammad Fasih. I think the summary that I would like to make would be on the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being all-seeing. If it's such a wonderful faculty that we have been given as human beings who can only see in a very limited way, then this should give us an idea of how truly great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Now, the sifat itself, we said, Allah does not require any organs or limbs or body parts to see. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anything. Not eyes, not ears, not body, nothing. Allah is one, and Allah does not need anything ever. And we said last week that nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees everything, even in the darkest corners of our heart. Allah sees. The other point I think that's worthwhile mentioning is that something need not be visible. It need not even be born for Allah to see that. Allah can see everything before it even comes into creation. And we said the logic of that was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability to see everything is not dependent on something appearing first in the world. That would be a sign of need. Allah would then be waiting before that thing can be seen. So that would be a sign of dependence. Allah was all-seeing before Allah even created the universe. The other point, I think, the last point on the summary was that time does not impact on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created time. Now, if time doesn't exist as far as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is concerned, then there is no past, present, or future. Which means if we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being all-seeing, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this was the absolutely amazing point that came out, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees everything from the beginning of the creation of this world or this universe right until the day of Qiyamah. Everything from the beginning till the end and everything that happened in between. And even more amazing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't wait for these events to unfold. Allah sees everything instantaneously and at the same time. Every single thing that's happening in the universe, the entire universe. That would be the summary, Muhammad Fasih.
Now, but Asani, if we look at where we left off last week, we never really got into the attributes of Allah, into the attribute of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala Basir in the way that wanted to unpack. So, if we could go back and then just look at this attribute of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala as the All Seeing, how do we understand this type of sight? How do we explain it? Because again, when we talk about sight, we say that we have the ability to see, and so therefore that is the type of sight that we understand it to be. But the study also mentioned in the summary that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can also see things that are not visible in a sense to human beings. Uh, can we then say that that sight also encompasses being able to see into the heart, to see into the intentions of human beings, to see into those things that we keep hidden?
Muhammad Fasih, yes, this sifat must be understood as belonging or an attribute, a quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we must understand we are talking about the one who created every single thing in the entire creation. Every single thing. So yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see in the hearts of people, and we can't hide anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also sees what is going on in the other worlds that exist. Allah speaks to us and tells us there are other worlds that Allah has created. Many worlds. The creator of all the worlds. Allah can see in the ghaib, like Allah sees everything here in our universe. Allah can see whatever is happening in the other dimensions or planes of existence that we don't even know of. But I think the important thing about the sifat, Muhammad Fasih, if I could just move on, is to say, how do we extract the benefit from having discussed the sifat? How can we learn things from the sifat that makes us better Muslims? At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't benefit from our ibadah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as great as He ever will be, and nothing we do can make Allah less great or more great. Allah has reached a perfect state of greatness. Now, one of the things when we talk about our eyes, it's the more obvious thing, and especially to menfolk. We often use our eyes for the wrong purposes. We gaze. That's one of the words that's being used when we look at women who are inappropriately dressed. Sometimes we see these things without consciously wanting to. It just appears somebody is walking past you, or you're at the shop, or you watching a TV program, or reading a book, or whatever, or a magazine, and these images. Now if we don't consciously make an effort to avoid those places where we can be exposed to those kinds of sites, then we are to blame, even if it happened accidentally. If you know you're going to be placed in a situation where you will be exposed to these unlawful sites, then you are equally to blame. You can't say, I was there, but this happened without me playing any role. It just happened. It was right in front of me. I want to use a terrible example now. We heard about the nudist colony. I think it was called Sandy Bay or something years ago. I'm not even sure that you or people know what I'm talking about. You can't go there knowing what you're going to expect and then claim to be innocent. In the same way, if you know you're going to uh, a mall where you know people are generally inappropriately dressed, those places must be avoided. Otherwise, you're going to have to answer for why you chose to go there rather than somewhere else. But the other thing about this is also that even at our social gatherings, um, it's not that people are only inappropriately dressed. People may be correctly dressed, but when there are people of the opposite sex gathering, then people also use their eyes for the wrong purposes. Um, so, how we socialize and whom we socialize with is equally important. And we should rather avoid the temptation, um, because if you are there and you fall in that trap, then you are going to be led astray and you're going to be punished for that if you played an active role. If something happens by accident that's completely out of your control and you took whatever precautions you could, that's a different case. Allah will judge you, but Allah knows what your intentions were and what effort you made to safeguard your eyes. So, Muhammad Fasih, that would be the one area, um, insofar as guarding our and protecting our eyes. And Imam Ghazali says, radiallahu an, that the one who is able to lower and control his gaze will be rewarded with the sweetness of worship. Subhanallah. Don't we all long for that? That we taste the sweetness of worship. Now, if you protect your eyes, man or woman, doesn't matter, and use it for the correct purposes, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises you a reward of the sweetness of worship. Muhammad Fasih.
Subhanallah, if we think about it, Bilisani, um, when the attribute and one goes inside and starts examining oneself, and uses the attribute as a way to purify oneself, and then act upon that, can we say that um, through those stages, those are the ways that we develop not only consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, but also that we start to develop a sense of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we are considering Allah in everything that we do.
Yes, Muhammad Fasih. You see, the eyes are doorways to the heart. If your heart is filled with the wrong things, we get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our hearts. If we clear out all those things and protect our hearts from all those filthy, incorrect, and known wrong things, then you make your heart a place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's nur can easily descend into. And it's a means of purifying one's heart if you use your eyes correctly. Now you can use your eyes for different reasons. You can also use your eyes when you walk down the street and you see, or not even you walking down the street, even in your own homes or at work or whatever, and you see someone doing something wrong that you know is wrong, don't just ignore it. Try and respond in the appropriate manner. And there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, and I quote, if someone among you sees wrong, he must write it by his hand if he can. In other words, he must take action. If he cannot, then by his tongue. In other words, he should speak out against it. He must object. If he cannot do that, then by his gaze. In other words, with a gaze of disapproval. And if he cannot even do that, then in his heart. There Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved Prophet, gave us clear guidance of how we should respond when we see that people are doing wrong. You can't just walk away and say, it's not my business. And this is unfortunately the way the world is going. We've become so selfish. We've gone into our shells and we only look after our own and our own homes, and we don't care about what's happening out there, right or wrong. We are compelled to react in one of those four ways. In other words, do something about it. If you can't, speak out against it. If you can't even do that, then at least show with your eyes that you disapprove of it, or otherwise feel in your heart that this was something wrong. I wish I could have done something about it.
Now, but certainly, in trying to benefit from the attribute of Al Basir in our own lives, and we talk about sight as something that, as for human beings, is a great ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Um, could we also then say that part of using that sight in the best way is to make dhikr with it? And to make dhikr with it, to gaze upon the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a mindfulness of seeing the Creator in everything, in seeing the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking in all that is present in the world.
That's one of the extremely high forms of ibadah, to look for the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around us. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be seen with the physical eyes, but we can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's abilities and qualities and sifat and names wherever we turn our faces. Nothing in creation exists which does not have the sifat and the names, some of the names, sometimes not all the names, but some of the names, but all the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connected to whatever you are seeing. So if you can look at whatever it might be, and you can recognize that Allah is the creator of that, Allah is seen through that which Allah created, and that gives you a remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is an extremely, extremely important way of making ibadah. It's considered as even a higher form of ibadah than our normal salah and fasting and all of those things. That's compulsory. Those things we must do. If you don't do it, you can't claim to be a Muslim. But if you do it, the higher form of ibadah is to actually ponder and reflect and tafakkur on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence and greatness, and how it manifests itself in the created world. But a higher form than that even is to actively do something to be of help and assistance to where there's need around you. Not only people, but even animals or plants, anything in creation. When we observe hardship, we are compelled as Muslims to see what we can do to bring about relief. Muhammad Fasih.
The voice of Budasani Mani. This is the program Tawhid in the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, book 3 in a series. And tonight we are looking at the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala known as Al-Basir. We're going to go for a break right now, and when we come back, we will continue. Stay tuned. Budasani, where should we go from here?
I think, Muhammad Fasih, what I've got here is the whole question of hardship and suffering. How does our eyesight link to that? If I am making a point that that's a high form of ibadah, then what is... I was going to expand a bit further on that. And and now that we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching in the deepest corners of our heart, um, what what should we do, or why do we then behave in a way uh, that we tend to give more respect and we more fear our parents or the boss or the supervisor than we fear Allah? Because when the boss is around, or your mother or your father's around, then you don't do all of those things because you're scared of doing the wrong thing in their presence. But yet, when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do all of these things. And then I was going to conclude on the hadith, that what is ihsan, the three levels of belief. Islam is, or ihsan is, to believe in Allah as if you see Him, and even though you don't see Him, you must know that He sees you. I mean, that is the level, the highest level of belief.
Okay, inshallah. So the first point was coming
Hardship
back hardship.
and difficulty and need and struggles of people. How far should we go to assist? We know it's right to help where you can help, but how far should we go? I mean, you can take that point and mantra it the way you want to.
Inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid with Badisani Mani. And this evening we're looking at the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala known as Al-Basir, the All-Seeing. Now, Badisani, the other question I think would be, when we look at this aspect of sight and how it translates in our interactions, the things that we see now, we spoke about the things that we look at are haram or halal in a sense, but now what do we say about a situation where we see difficulty, where we see hardship physically, and our duty then as Muslims and how we should interact? And these two points might not seem related, but certainly there are aspects of these that are interconnected, because we're using a sense of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, the sense of sight, and we have an ability to help someone else after we have been given that information by physically seeing. So how do we then engage after that, and at what level do we engage?
I would say, Muhammad Fasih, that we should first recognize that we are the Khalifas, the representatives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. And we should try and emulate, copy, imitate the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all merciful, the compassionate one, the one to whom we all turn when we're in difficulty. There are times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create the conditions and circumstances and place us in front of those difficulties, whatever it might be, and hardships, to test us, to see how is this slave of mine going to respond to this. Now, I'm not talking about only people who have financial difficulty. Yes, there, if we can, we should help. But not only there, we should also look at people who are sick, people who are lonely, people who are distressed, people who have lost somebody close to them. And when we say observe, we don't necessarily mean observe necessarily with the eyes, but you become aware of it. Then it's a duty upon you. Because what is going to happen, Muhammad Fasih? Every little blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us while we are on this dunya, we're going to have to account in full. If it is our money, then every single cent must be accounted for. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us money, but it's placed as a amana, as a trust in our hands to give to others. Sometimes it is for our own purposes, and sometimes it is for us to pass it on to where we observe the need. Even our time, Allah's given us so many years, Allah's given us good health. We're going to have to account for our health and our time. How did I use my time when I heard so and so was not well for a long time, and I haven't even made the effort to go and visit that person, or to even phone or send a message. We've become so selfish and looking at our own personal needs, that we have become almost blunt to the needs of others. And as Muslims, we should be setting the example of bringing about relief and assistance to those who are enduring whatever difficulty or hardship that they are going through. Muhammad Fasir.
But as we start to wrap up the show, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expect from us in terms of the not only this attribute, but what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expect of us in general when dealing with these attributes, and acting upon them? And also, how do we as Muslims take the examples that we've mentioned today and make it a reality and practice upon it on a regular basis?
You know, Muhammad Fasih, it is more important to look after the needs of the unfortunate than to go and sit at home on your musla and make ibadah. It's more the value of what you are doing, because when you sit on your musalla and you are making dhikr, then you are only trying to get reward for yourself, because that reward of that dhikr or reciting the Quran is only for your own personal benefit, because Allah doesn't benefit from it. If more people can benefit, the more people that can benefit from our interaction and efforts that we are making to make their life more comfortable. Sometimes it's not even a person who's in need. You are just trying to spread joy and happiness. Even if you just crack a joke, of course, it must be above the navel. If you make jokes, be sure that you don't use the wrong jokes to make people laugh. But if you are spreading joy and comfort and happiness to people in whatever way we can, whether it's bringing relief, then that is an extremely high form of ibadah. Because ultimately, why are we trying to learn about the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah is perfect in all senses. Allah is as great as Allah can be. But we are supposed to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better, so that we can give the due respect and status to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, as our creator and the owner of this entire universe. But more importantly, to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to do. And what is that? That is the Quran and the Sunnah. And the Sunnah speaks about all of these things. If you go through the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his lifestyle, then you will see it is about looking after the poor, the orphans, the unfortunate people, and behaving in a way where he spread happiness and joy. And that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us. That is, if we truly want to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then using this faculty of our sight to do some of the things that we've mentioned is an extremely powerful way of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there's a hadith which I want to maybe round off with from my side, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when he was asked about what is ihsan, he said, and I quote, ihsan is excellence in faith, and it is to worship your Lord as if you see him, and though you do not see him, know that he sees you. In other words, don't behave differently towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas in front of other people you will be more careful, you will be concerned. He's seeing me, I can't do this in front of him, he's older than me, or he's got a higher position than me, so you don't want to do it in front of him. But we do all these wrong things in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that consciousness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching your every single move settles properly and deeply into your heart, we will be too scared to do the wrong things.
Subhanallah, Bilisari, I think that what better note to end the program on than that, because consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that we always discuss, but it's something that's very hard for many people to attain, because we are so rooted in the dunya, we're so rooted in our own activities on this dunya, and we are so rooted in being forgetful as mankind, as insan, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we'll do things not realizing that Allah is the all-seeing and Allah is constantly watching us. Subhanallah. But Asani, I want to say a big shukran for joining us this evening and exploring this important topic and very significant name. And all the best, inshallah, for Bilisani and family. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And to all the listeners out there, Muhammad Fasih.
And as we wrap up, just to let you know that if you would like a copy of the book, The Essentials of Tawhid, or any other books in the series, you're welcome to visit www.salimani.co.za, or you can Google salimani.co.za, and you'll find PDF copies of the book or any of the other books in the series, including The Big Bang, The Amazing Human Body, on the website, free to download. Shukran so much for tuning in. From myself, Muhammad Fasih Peterson, till I speak to you again, inshallah. Abadi wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Shukran so much.
Shukran, Muhammad Fasih. Yeah, sure.
Ya, alhamdulillah.